All right, DevNexus lunchtime session. Hi, everyone. I'm Heather Van Cura, and we're here to have our panel of Java experts talk with you about how to grow your career as a developer. We have a wide variety of experts here, so the panel should represent all different types of developers. I'm sure you can relate to at least one of the folks on our panel. If we have time, we'll even take questions from the audience. So we'll start out with a few questions I have teed up, and then we'll move on to take questions from the audience. So I'm going to start by asking all the panelists to introduce themselves. Why don't we start with Mary and then just move down?
Okay, so my name is Mary Gwigleski. I'm currently a senior software engineer, technical architect at US Cellular. So I've been doing actually beyond just Java, because these days all the apps are like all platforms. It's all like a huge ecosystem. So I've also touched into like JavaScript, like beyond the Java, and then also mobile apps and all those things. And then my community involvement, I've been helping the Chicago Java Users Group quite heavily, organizing meetings and speaking to high caliber speakers like Venkat in here and Ed and everybody else too. So yeah, so that's my pretty much my community involvement. Yeah.
Okay,
Thanks.
cool.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mary, for being on the panel. Ed?
Hi, my name's Ed Burns, and I'm hoping to bring to the panel a mid-career developer experience. I've been doing software development for 25 years or so, and have been studying the topic and domain of career management and career growth. I have a book about the topic here, Secrets of the Rockstar Developers. It's a collection of interviews with lots of great developers that I could find about their secrets and how they got to where they are and how they avoid getting burnt out, how they avoid having, how they deal with tight deadlines, all the things we have to deal with as software developers. And I'm just hoping that we can bring some stuff out here that sharing some stories and some perspectives, because we have some new developers and some old developers and some very senior developers as well. So as Heather said, it's a wide range and well representation of our industry.
All right, cool. Thanks, Ed. I think you have a lot to offer. Let's see. Venkat, you have...
Venkat Subramaniam. I'm a programmer, author, and speak in conferences, do consulting, mentoring, and I think I spend more time in airplanes than on Earth.
Okay, Ivar? You want
Okay, my name is Ivar. I'm a Java developer. I run a local jog in Malmö in Sweden. I'm also in the Java community executive committee, and as well as the PMC for EU4J. And at conferences, I often do talks about microprofile.
All right, cool. Jonathan has his own mic.
I have my own mic. I'm blessed. I'm Jonathan Ross. I'm a senior software engineer. I work in C++ and Java in the high-frequency trading business. I work at a company called IMC Trading. Otherwise, I'm also actively involved in the Chicago Java User Group, where I try and bring in awesome speakers. And I'm also dabbling a little bit in the sponsorship side of that. And the rest of the time, I'm also an avid musician. So.
Null pointers. Little plug for the null pointers later.
A plug for the null pointers. This evening, Ed and I will be entertaining you all with the null pointers.
Yes, hopefully with the help of lots of libation that you would drink before listening.
That's always fun. Mercedes.
My name is Mercedes. I am from Guatemala. Actually, I am a CTO in a startup based in Guatemala that is called Productivity. I have 6 years of career development. And recently, I was promoted as an Oracle Developer Champion, and I am an OutZero Ambassador too. I run 2 communities in Guatemala, a JDuchess chapter that is the female chapters of Java, and I have a Google community that is called Devs Plus 502. And in the past, I run during 3 years Java Users Group, organizing meetings and the Java Day in Guatemala. And I am currently an active international speaker. Like 1 year and a half speaking international and 5 years speaking locally in Guatemala.
All right, awesome. Well, thanks again for all the panelists. I think one of the most common questions that I get from developers is talking about how to advance their career. So one of the things I wanted to ask you about was, what are some of the activities outside of your regular employment you've done to advance your career? So some of you have already mentioned some of them, but maybe just add a little bit more context and color around those in terms of, how you kind of took the step out from day to day, putting your head down, getting the job done, to really, starting to look at some of the ways that you could maybe stand out a little bit as a developer and move outside of that, just your regular employment, 9 to 5 or whatever hours you take. Just maybe share a couple stories or examples about how you've done that. Ed looks like he's ready to.
I'm always ready to go on this one.
Okay.
So,
when are you going to finish with your question, Heather? Because I really want to answer.
I want to hear everyone's answer, because I got a lot of questions myself too. But for this one, I think you have to remember the notion of find things that people look at as somebody else's problem. I don't have to deal with that, and then fix that thing, because there's so much out there that people don't want to deal with but needs to be done. So, and with the advent and complete domination of GitHub, you can find open source projects, and you don't have to be like a master at writing code. People want their issues to be triaged. People want their readmes to be spell checked and maybe even localized. There's just so much entry level stuff that you can do to get involved in a community. So you have to find out what sort of domain you're excited about, and then find a corresponding open source project that is in that domain, and then just see where the low-hanging fruit is and just get started. It's never been easier to do it. That's one of the great things about software. The barriers to entry are lower than any other human endeavor that's happened where you can actually achieve professional success. The tools you need, especially with the cloud now, most of the time the tools you need are actually cost-free or very low cost. So it's a great way to get in and get started.
Venkat?
So in terms of advancing the career, I would say two different things. One is, I think it takes a little while, but you need to really figure out what you are really, really passionate about. What are you curious about? What would get you up in the morning and say, I want to tinker with this? And then become really an expert in it. And the second thing I would say is, it's really not about whom you know, but who knows you. That makes a really big difference. So what that really means is become prolific. Be active in your community. So people in your community, local community, should know who you are, because you're active, you're speaking, you're organizing, you're helping out the user group. So that's one way for people to know whom you are. So when there is an opportunity, they will know to call you. And so, like I said, it's all about who knows you. So the more prolific you are, the more you are dedicated to what you do, people begin to take note of it. And that's extremely important to advance the career.
So just a follow-up, so like Venkat, for instance, like how did you decide you're going to do your first speaking opportunity outside of the courses that you teach, of course, I don't mean that, but like, what pushed you over the edge to be like, do your first talk? Because like I tell first-time speakers, once you do the first talk, it really just snowballs from there. You get invited to one more conference, another conference, and it spreads globally as well. So do you remember any instance to share?
Oh, absolutely. I'm really glad you asked that question, because I remember very clearly back when I used to live in Houston, I made it a point to speak in both the Java user group and the .NET user group at least once a year. And in fact, I've continued that even today. I speak in about 15 user groups every year, just because that's really what made a big difference for me. And it in fact turned out that I was speaking in one of those user groups back in 2001 when a conference organizer came to promote the conference, saw me speak and said, hey, it looks like you're somebody who could be in the conference. And that's how my conference speaking actually started. So absolutely, speaking in local user groups is a great way, because the user group is a very friendly environment. You can get feedback, people can help you to get better at what you do. It's also a way for you to tease out some ideas you may have and say, hey, I'm working on this. What do you think? Is this a good approach? So that's really in a multiple different ways, speaking at user groups is really a good way to get started.
All right, that's awesome. So now, you're very humble, Venkat, but obviously one of the most sought after Java speakers doing keynotes all over the world, and it started with your local Java user group and spread from there. So
absolutely.
All right, Jonathan, I saw you were getting ready to answer the question.
I was about to say, I still wonder to this minute why I'm up on this stage, but I guess whatever I've been doing over the last while sort of paid off. I started a couple of years ago just hounding speakers after their talks and asking questions to them after the sessions at conferences like this. And pursuing the speakers who were speaking on topics that I was passionate about and asking questions there, and then inviting them to come and do talks at the Chicago Java User Group and do in-house sessions at IMC and stuff like that. I don't know, it seems to have panned out. I've met an awful lot of people this way. I've got to get close, have I? Okay. So what else? That was all I was wanting to add there. I just think speaking to people at conferences, don't be shy, go up to the speakers. We love talking to people when they have good questions after the sessions.
Right. So just following your interests too, right? Things that interest you, and it sounds like it kind of naturally happened for you.
I was hounding all the Java performance speakers and talking to the JVM engineers. I'm really into the nitty-gritty details of what goes on under the hood in Java, so I was hounding Brian Getz and the likes. And Venkat, I hounded you to no avail.
I think there's a couple different, I don't know if we can look at it this way, but it seems like there's two tracks to look at it. One would be becoming the individual expert and promoting yourself, but the other is being a community leader. And I think, Mercedes, that's something that you're doing more, like with all the different communities you're doing.
Yes, I am running different communities. In that, this is one of the keys for have successful sometimes in your developer career, because when we are working, sometimes we are focused only in one thing, is that thing that we need to do at work.
Exactly.
So how I will discover this all world of colors that we have in technology, so attending a community, because in that community people speak about many things, and one thing that happened when we as leader of that community is that people came to the community and say, I want to know about this topic, and I say, oh fuck, I don't know anyone that know about that topic, so I need to become the expert of that topic for learn that to the people in the community because it's interesting on that. So this is a challenge to leader a community. So you are in front of that, and you need to see what are the interesting of your people, because that community is important. It's not you, it's your community. So this is something. For example, I am an Android developer. I start my career as an Android developer, but I grow up in a Java community. So I am like a weird case. And I will say, being a speaker, if someone don't want to speak, I dare you to make that. Because I am now CTO in a startup because someone found me speaking in an event and say, I need to make this product and I think that you can help me. And we create that startup. So it's a really grow up in the career just for speak, just for share what I'm learning or what I am doing every day.
Cool. Ivar, did you want to, I know you've been active in the community for a while, but it wasn't until maybe like the last 3 or 4 years that I think you've become a little bit more visible. So from my perspective, looking at you and your career, it's like something over the last 3 to 4 years, something kind of shifted where, you became more visible and the community got more involved. And how has that impacted your career?
Yeah, I think it really changed when I started speaking at the bigger conferences, like being accepted to Java 1. That was kind of a thing that made me more visible around there. And I've always done speaking at the local Java user groups, and we're always looking for speakers, so we're always happy for people coming there. And I think contributing to open source, like joining the JCP, the expert groups there, the executive committee has done a great deal for me. And I want to add a little bit what Ed said as well, because I think last year at DevNexus, Venkat, at your keynote, you said being a programmer is like being a kid in a candy store every day. And for us, GitHub is that candy store. So we just have to find the things that we like to do and make it better. Just contribute to whatever we're doing and take it wherever you go.
I think, contributing to open source projects, and that you kind of alluded to that in your answer, is one of the best ways to kind of start to grow your reputation and career, is pick a project that you're passionate about, like you said, Jonathan, and follow an issue tracker. That's like a really introductory way to do it. Find something
as Venkat
there.
said, become an expert.
Yeah, right. Mary, you have anything to add to that?
Yes. So for me, I like to testify to what all of you panelists too are talking about, especially Venkat, that says, users group are a really good way to kind of get yourself into the door. And believe it or not, I used to be a very shy person. I did not want to talk in front of people. I got nervous and I was like, oh, what am I going to do? But because I started going to CJUG and then Bob and Freddie, and all of them were inviting me to help out. And I started doing a lightning talk, and that's how all of a sudden I found myself, I actually could speak in front of people and then kind of like get comfortable. And it just like slowly it builds up my confidence. And now actually I spoke at Java One and now at DevNexus as well. So yeah, so I want to testify it is a very good way to get in is through users group and all the activities in the community that you're kind of reaching out to. So yeah.
Well, that's kind of the positive aspects, right? I kind of want to focus more on challenges now. My next question, right? So maybe name some of your challenges when I'm finished talking, and then, give an example of how you overcame that challenge, right? So, and it can be too, like, so what are some of the challenges that you see developers facing? What are some of the challenges you've faced in your career? And maybe give an example of how you've overcome that. Okay, Ed.
No, I don't want to go first. I wanted to put an addendum on the previous topic, but I'll come back to it.
Now I don't want to speak, say.
All right.
You interrupt me.
Interrupting's a pet peeve. Now you know.
Sorry.
Okay, Mercedes, you start.
Okay, yeah. This is something interesting in that we were speaking about that because sometimes we don't only have challenges in our developer career, in our life, in essence. And I will take my story, yes, okay? Before that I focused completely in made development, I was trying to have a career in art, I studied 7 years in a conservatory about piano, and then I was trying to study a bachelor degree in fine arts, and working and running my communities. And the problem is that I needed like 6 hours just for studying my piano program. I was taking my university classes. I need to study for my university classes. I included drawing, include dance, solfeo, right, and work 6 hours and run the community. So I was in one moment when I was sleeping anything during 3 days. It's like I was dying, and I was not having successful in anything. Just I was doing good things. So I was in a class, and one day the guy said, why is that smart people or people that had many talents never had successful? It's because they are trying to make everything at the same time. You need to choose something. And I say, oh, fuck, this is my story. I need to choose something. And I choose technology. And I will say that was the first jump that I made in my career and was impressive. I say, oh my God, I am making many good things running communities. We won a Duke's Choice Award this year in educational outreach with the Java users group because we was running a tour. So I say it's impressive, but he has reason. And maybe that can be you too. And that happened when we are in a bad work, or for example, I have a bad experience in a community and I need to leave that community. Take me 6 months decided that. But sometimes if you are in a place when your work is not being valued or you feel that it's bad, well, you need to take that decision, be strong. And I say, this is the best thing for me. And, after that, I started to be international speaker, and that makes me become a developer champion. So don't be afraid to take this decision. So will not be something bad for you. Maybe we'll stop to doing something like a main track, but will have a really positive impact in our careers.
Focus,
yes.
All right. We got applause for that. All right, Venkat, I think, had something to say.
Well, I'll say two things when it comes to facing challenges and succeeding from it. The first I kind of notice a lot in observing other people as well is a lot of times we are a little shy to ask for help. And I think it's important to be, so to say, a bit shameless. Ask for help and get as much help as you can. And one of the best things I've ever had is people helping me to get better and giving me feedback, giving me criticism and telling me how I could do better. And a little bit being shameless to ask for that help is very important, especially earlier in the career. And to me, that was extremely important when I was trying to learn programming. It was not easy for me at all, and trying to really ask as much help from people to know how I can do better. And people who were better at doing things were my role models, asking them to review what I did. The other thing I cannot ignore is the incredible support of the family that you have. Your career success heavily depends on how good your family is in supporting that for you. And I would say that's been incredibly effective for me. Is I couldn't be doing a lot of stuff I do if I didn't have a family that fully supported and sacrificed for my sake. So I definitely want to say having that also is very critical.
Those are really interesting points. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, the supportive network is really important. Your family being and supporting you, and admitting when you don't know anything, that you have questions, that you don't know everything. I see that really as a common thread through the developers that I talk to. Often, is admitting that you don't know the answer can be a really big challenge. It even came up this morning in the breakfast. Mary, you want to share some of your challenges?
Sure. So for me, I find one of the biggest challenges these days when I work in a business context is that I have to somehow, well, among ourselves and developers, we know what we're talking about. But when you have to actually talk to your business, because they are the ones that pay, that gives the funding, so I often is finding it more and more, the more senior I'm getting, more experience, I'm finding there's a very big need to be able to communicate and articulate what it is, and not, in our lingo. And I find it is a skills that I'm also trying to develop at this time to kind of talk so then the business will understand without misunderstanding, because a lot of times we talk about low-level stuff and then they don't quite understand it. They get even more confused. So I think that's something too. I feel as developers we need to not just do the coding, but we need to learn how to communicate and speak to the business users effectively. So
yeah, and I think that's increasing more and more. So even pure developer technical roles are spending up to 50% of their time needing to communicate, right? So the way that we develop software and work in open source projects, and the way that it's developed internally with using agile methodologies, all about communication. So it's a key skill to have as a developer.
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I'd just like to tie into
Jonathan.
sorry.
Okay, Jonathan,
Beg
go
your
ahead.
pardon. Just tying into Venkat's point there about getting feedback and everything like that. Also working in the industry, I find that it's really important to have a very good code review process in place. So if you've got a good process in there to get feedback from your peers, then that's an unmissable way of developing yourself further as a developer.
That's closer. I can't quite hear you.
Can't you hear me? I'm soft-spoken. I beg your
You
pardon.
are soft-spoken.
So a good code review process is a great way of getting peer feedback. And the other one is maybe seek out a personal mentor, maybe one, not necessarily your boss, but somebody you look up to within the organization, and seek that feedback actively.
Did you have a mentor that made a big impact on your career?
I did.
You just share anything about this? How did you find that person? I mean, that's another common question I get. It can be awkward, right? I mean, I usually say something like, can start informally. It doesn't have to be like, oh, hi, would you be my mentor? But anything?
Actually, for me, one of my greatest mentors was actually my master's supervisor. He taught me an awful lot outside. I studied physics. He taught me a lot outside of physics, and I still get back to him to bounce ideas off him. A sort of personal coach.
Okay, cool.
I want to put on to Mercedes' point about knowing when it's time to take a tough decision and move to a new thing. That also applies to your technology stack. So a lot of times if you get really comfortable with a particular tool chain, and that tool chain itself doesn't evolve, it's hard to let go sometimes and move to the new thing that has been embraced by a wider body of people. So you have to be constantly reevaluating what's in your toolbox and be willing to change that. And I struggle with this myself because I'm still using Emacs for things that probably people aren't using Emacs for. So like mail reading, for example. But the point is you just have to be open to trying new things, because at the end of the day, our industry is all about facility at acquiring new skills and abandoning or de-emphasizing old ones constantly, and that's hard to do.
Right.
Yeah, I want to go back to the mentoring thing, and I was approached by the guy who runs the local Java user group together with me. He just came up to me and said, "Hey, Ivar, do you want to be my mentor? I want to become you in 5 years. I want to be a Java champion. I want to be an international speaker. I want to be contributing in the community. Can you mentor me?" And I said, "Of course I will." So that's the other side of it. Reach out to people that you see. Hey, I want to become that guy, and you can find them.
So yeah, one of the things I did for Java 1 for a number of years, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years in a row, is find someone in the community and partner with them and say, hey, let's do a talk together. And this would be the experience that got them into it. And my good friend Hazem Salah, who now works at Nickelodeon in New York, he was a great Java developer in Egypt, in Cairo. And I got to know him, and we gave a talk at Java 1 together. He came into the JSF community, and he eventually asked me to sponsor him for his visa, and that's how he came to the United States. So these kind of connections can really change people and change their careers. And it's I think our duty as senior developers to spend a significant portion helping others do that.
So the last couple comments have really gone into one of my next questions, which was about personal growth and training. So what are some of the things that you've done as a developer in your career, and some of the things that you would recommend that have been the most beneficial for you? So one of my examples was mentoring. A few of you brought it up on your own, but there are, of course, lots of other things. And why don't you share some of those?
Okay, I only will add something to the last point, is that I saw many developers are afraid to ask for help. So please, if you need help, ask for help. Someone next to you have the answer and want to share that with anyone that asks for that. So about what
Ask
other
for
thing?
help, yes.
Ask for help, yes. Come on. Okay, what other things we may, I like to take mocks. Yeah, in that when I don't have time. So sometimes I don't follow the mock, like the session of the week, make the exercise. If not, I wait for the end of the mock and I make like a marathon of the mock course. Works perfect. So instead to make that on Netflix, make that on a mocks, and exist many mocks that are for free and are really good.
Maybe even just back up and share what a mock is, the massive on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Massive courses online that provided, by Coursera, Udacity, Udemy. In that, Oracle have ones that are good. Now I am taking a few courses there. Or you can find that on YouTube. Exists people, experts that record videos, sessions, and they share that on YouTube. Or watch the recorded conference sessions that are really good too. I try to read books, but that usually is hard to read, so I don't have much time for that. But then read blogs, I don't know what, but I think that here have many Twitter accounts. So come on, don't follow these ladies. Oh, I put new lips. I am in the page. No, come on, don't follow those people. That don't give you anything really positive to your career. Follow the gurus. Come on, follow these guys, follow this guy, follow this guy, follow these guys, other guys in the conference, because that people is writing articles, and they share that to you. I write this article, so if you follow the gurus, the Twitter pages, of the official pages of technologies, they provide you tips to and things, good information. So this is what I do.
One of the things that I think is a good career strategy is to find your invisible college. Has anyone heard the term invisible college before? So this is a term that I talked about in the Rockstar book, and all of the rock stars had this thing. They were a member of an invisible college, which is basically your posse. It's your group of friends that you stick with throughout your career and that kind of have the industry bases covered as a whole, because the problem with MOOCs and all of these kinds of things is there's so many of them. So it's very easy to just be completely overwhelmed and shut down. So you have to recognize it's impossible to keep tabs on everything. Just accept that fact. And if you're involved, a community, it's basically a community. So if you're involved in a community, everyone can kind of share the knowledge, and you have your own thing that you can share. And if you need to get an answer to a question, you can reach out to someone you know, rather than just going to some random forum that you don't know. It's much better to use it as an opportunity to form a relationship with someone too.
Okay. Venkat, you want to share?
I couldn't agree more with what Ed said. The good old saying, tell me who your friends are, I'll tell about you, is extremely important. I would say clearly that made a huge difference for me because of the friends I could hang out with. After you speak in a conference, what do I do on a Friday night or a Saturday night? It's the geeks that I geek out with, where we sit and talk about exception handling and garbage collection until late in the night. That is a huge difference in terms of the knowledge you gain and being critiqued and how you really geek out. The other thing I want to say is, as you become more experienced in the career, giving back to the community is incredibly important. And there's a lot of things we kind of shrug and say, there's not much I can do, but there's so much you can actually give in ways you may not even realize it. The number one step, go back to the college you graduated from. And there are so many students who are going through career right now. If you can spend an hour, 2 hours sharing your experience as a software developer, imagine what impact you can make on them. Because they're right there in the school going through and reading and trying to graduate, but looking at you being successful gives them really great hope that, hey, there is actually some really cool stuff I can also do when I graduate. So just spending some time in colleges back where you graduated from can make a huge difference. If you're not living where you graduated, find a local university or a college and go spend some time. The user groups, one of the things that I enjoy thoroughly is, knowledge is a wealth that grows as you give. So if you can organize a code retreat, just a Saturday where developers get together and we do pair programming for 5-6 hours, it's unbelievable how much you can walk away, not just helping others learn, but when others question why you're doing certain things a certain way, it makes you think very differently. So we end up really learning a lot collectively together. So organizing code retreats is something that I thoroughly enjoy, and working with developers in the local community, that's another way to really give. So there's absolutely so many ways. If you can just stop and ask the question, how can I be of help to somebody? I'm sure you'll find so many ways to really help others to grow, and in the process, you grow yourselves as well.
You can also do this on a smaller scale. You can also do this inside your company. One thing we do a lot is we organize brown bag lunches or show and tells, where we or book clubs where we study a particular topic. For instance, when Java 8 came out, we worked out together during a couple of brown bag lunch sessions, worked out how streams work. And this is a good way as well to help your colleagues. You don't have to necessarily take the plunge into the communities and start working with Java user groups. You can also just do this within your own company. Work very well with us.
Anything else you want to add in terms of things you recommend for training and growing?
Well, just generally speaking, back to Venkat, one of Venkat's first points, go deep, become an expert. I mean, one thing that I swear by is read the RTFM. There's not just the blogs and the books. You can actually, we're blessed in the Java community that the source code is readable. That really helps. You can actually read the source code and work out for yourself exactly what it's doing. And you can become an expert. You can become an expert on that in your company. You can become the go-to guy on, Java concurrency or on streams or on lambdas. And you reach out to the community and ask, find a supporting network, find people who you can ask to further deepen your knowledge. But reading the manual pages is nothing to be ashamed of. That's how you become an expert in these matters.
Right. Okay. Cool. I think Mary or Ivar, you want to share?
Maybe just one small thing. I've been to a couple of hackathons. I do find that it's actually amazing because you go into you being random group of people, and actually you're talking about the idea too. Then you try to implement within a very short time. I think those are very good opportunities to grow your skills. You'll be amazed what you learn in just a weekend, for example. Yeah, that's what I've done too. So yeah,
that's a really good example, and I think there in that way you can grow your communication skills as well as some of those softer skills in those type of environments.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Cool. Ivar?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is to just go out there and do it. More or less, everybody can be a speaker. You don't have to be the super expert the first time you do it, because when you prepare that talk and you learn that topic, you become an expert. So you're kind of forced into learning something a little bit better than the guys in the audience. And then you're de facto the expert in the room. So just get out there.
I kind of want to challenge a bit the necessity of expertise. Expertise obviously needs to exist, but with the breadth of things out there, I think you can do pretty well as being a generalist as well. So don't get discouraged, because a lot of times, I don't know, for my neuro makeup, if someone tells me you must become an expert to be successful, that's pretty daunting. I mean, and in fact, let's face the fact that knowledge is so widely diffused that expertise is easily acquirable as well.
I don't suppose, maybe my wording was off there when I was talking about expertise. I think it's really important that developers know what it is, the tool that they're choosing is doing, and why it's doing it that way. That you're not just using it because it's the latest buzzword or the latest compliant technology, but that you really understand what problem it's solving. You don't have to understand it to the absolute minutiae of details, but just understanding the why is very important there.
Well, one of the things we've seen, I don't know, for those of us that have been around long enough, is the advent of Stack Overflow. And now it's really possible, and there are plenty of people that actually do this, where they just get their jobs done by looking at the thing, copying and pasting, and you can make stuff that kind of works and lets you get paid. But that's not the right way to do it, and you should scratch below that.
There is one thing we haven't touched, I think, and that is attend conferences. Go to conferences. Like, you're all here at DevNexus. This is where you learn things. And so attending conferences, a lot of conferences, and listen to the speakers, and sooner or later you'll realize that, hey, I could be up there.
And approach the speakers and ask them questions afterwards. That is the thing that did the best for me.
Yeah, I was going to say, it comes right back to Jonathan, and that actually leads me to what I was just going to say, which is now it's your turn to ask the questions. So we have a mic up here by the stage. So just come up to the mic in front of our stage here and, ask questions of the panelists. So
maybe we should send
ready.
the wireless
We're ready
out?
for the questions, and you're not going to be recorded on camera if you ask a question. So
You have a
there's the
question,
mic
Venkat?
right there. You have any questions to ask of our panelists?
Well, all right, I had one. If no one's, come on, I'm here. We need some questions. I'm going to ask a silly one if you don't get up on the mic.
What? What's your question?
My question is, what do you think of the notion that we've all been training an AI through Stack Overflow, and they're going to have a machine learning algorithm that scrapes Stack Overflow and learns how to do our jobs?
All right, who's taking Ed's question? We warned you, we're getting random questions here.
I have no problem as long as they keep sending the check to me.
Okay, people. Anyone else?
I don't have much of an opinion on that one in particular.
You look perplexed.
Well, yeah, I have been thinking an awful lot about the notion of AI taking over an awful lot of jobs in a lot of career paths, but I've always thought that being a developer would be one of the last ones to go.
Right. Well, I can't help but notice that my employer, Oracle, is now one of our major selling points is reduce labor costs with our automated intelligent database. On the back of The Economist magazine, month after month after month, they're saying, buy this product because you have to pay less developers. And I'm like, But that AI is going to come eventually for more and more of us, I think. And I would like to get people's perspectives on that.
All right. Any other questions? I have one more question. If anyone in the audience wants to ask a question, we'll take that one first, though.
All right, there we go.
All right. Question from the audience.
Oh, yeah. Hello, my name is Ryan. I work for a software developer for Home Depot. So as far as getting in, right now I kind of generally work on the higher level of Java right now. So I work in a lot of APIs. I work at the higher abstraction level. So my interest a lot of times is in the lower abstraction level. I tend to find myself, digging around source code and trying to learn how things work. And I see these other companies, some of them are around us, that actually build the tools like Pivotal. What are you guys' recommendations for? And right now I pretty much spend my off time trying to prepare myself so I can actually. I'm in public, so I don't want to say I spend my time trying to prepare myself so that I can go work for these companies that actually build the tools. And what are you guys' recommendations for getting more prepared so that you can move yourself into a role doing that? Because that's my goal, is to get into a role where I'm actually building and understanding these tools and then moving up that chain instead.
Well, thanks for your question, Ryan. A lot of companies now have started really taking advantage of LinkedIn and Medium to get their own message out. So if you're trying to learn what they're doing, follow their blog posts and see what they're interested in. And that will give you an insight of what to study and what to look for.
Putting on my employer hat, I would say an important thing is to actually know your tools well. It's very hard when we're getting in developers straight out of university. They tend to know their data structures well and everything like that, but actually putting together a full system using, I don't know, Maven or IntelliJ, whatnot, they don't know how to operate the tools to write code. So if you're good with that, that's a great start. And also triage, basic triage, troubleshooting, finding bugs, debugging, all those workflows. If you're skilled at that, then you do a lot better than a lot of the university graduates that we're interviewing.
I would say three things. The first is networking. A lot of these organizations have their developers, employees speaking in conferences. Getting to know them a little bit better, networking. So that's first thing. Second is they have products, and a lot of those products are open source. If you can start contributing to some of those, whether it is fixing bugs, making enhancements, that's another way for you to really get familiar with it. And the third really is, when I talk to people, what I'm looking for is not how many technology names they know, but how really well they know things. The fundamentals make a big difference. So if you can show that you really understand how things work, not just how to use things, that becomes really valuable, because that means you can actually build stuff for them, then use what is being built. I think that is another very important thing, is to really come up with the understanding of how things work and being able to articulate it, and then also to be able to build stuff by open source products to show that you actually are capable of doing it. In a way, I would say, generally speaking, it's very effective when you start contributing and they recognize and they call you, than you trying to do a cold call and say, I want to come work for you guys. So anything you can do to lay that out in front is actually much better for you to really get there.
Any other advice for Ryan?
I don't know if it was kind of facetious when you were saying about machine learning scraping a Stack Overflow and then taking over our jobs, but do you think it's possible? Do you see a future where it's actually reality? Because a surgeon can't really, or they have limitations on how much they can operate on themselves. If a program is getting a virus or has bugs, do you foresee a future where machine learning really gets to the point where AI is actually fixing its own bugs? Because I can see it cloning itself, but fixing its own bugs and evolving in that sense. I mean, is that a reality, though?
I think it's possible that it might be certainly a field of study that's worth investigating. I wish we had Frank here, because Frank Greco
I'd say I think it's inevitable. It's
Yeah?
just the question is how long.
Okay. I mean, think about your own job. I mean, you mentioned bugs, right? A lot of the process for fixing a bug is you look at the log message, you see what the thing is, you try to analyze the state of the machine, and then you have to try to apply some sort of iterative logic, sometimes using a binary search to hone in on the thing, sometimes other kinds of approaches. And all of the inputs to that can be automatable in some way. So it seems like it would be possible to do. I just wonder if anyone's studying it.
All right. Well, there's that. Any other questions from the audience? We have time for one more question.
Hello.
Hi.
My name's Natasha. I'm here on scholarship through Women Who Code. I'm actually not a developer yet, aspiring. So I just wanted to know what would be some advice that you have for someone who is just getting into it. All of this is incredibly amazing and a bit overwhelming, because I'm just even learning how to define certain terminology so I can write a line of code. That's at the level that I'm at right now. So especially for the women who are on stage, what are some things, and for everyone, what are some things that you would suggest that I do to make sure that I'm getting the most out of this experience being here, and then also really being intentional about how I move forward in my process.
All right, so Mercedes or Mary, you want to take that one first? We haven't heard from you. Mary, you want to take that?
Okay, yeah. I guess as a woman too, I can certainly understand what you're talking about, trying to get into the field where it's like so dominated by male. I myself too, when I first got into the industry, I felt like I everywhere I've worked, it's always been I'm the only woman or maybe one of the few, 2 or 3. So it always, it didn't really help. So it's, I think now though, I mean, so I started my career back in the late 80s, early 90s, so things were different then. But now I do see it with all the internet, all the social media and everything. It's actually you're in a good time to get into the business. And there are a lot more support groups. There are users group. There are women coding groups that actually for me, I just don't have time to do everything. But whenever I can too, I would go and participate in like women's hackathon or women's event, and you talk with other women. And I actually was also in some career panel and then speaking with ladies who are very experienced. They might be school principal and they wanted to convert, like basically transfer or convert to becoming a programming person. So I find that those are very good opportunities, and you can look for those opportunities and then talk to people already in the field and then get experience and hear their stories. And then you kind of, by talking to a lot of people about their experiences, you kind of start to construct the experience that you want to take on, the journey you want to take on to achieve what you want to achieve. I think, yeah, definitely reaching out to the community and yeah, those are good. So,
Okay.
yeah.
I think we can hear from all the panelists. But Mercedes, you want to go next? You know, want to share the tips for getting started as a developer?
Well, I don't know. For me, this is hard. So how it start? But the question is, do you have a background in technology or not? Because if you don't have a background, first you need to choose something and find a way to learn that. If not, well, for example, go to conferences is a good way to make networking. And sometimes in the conference you can people looking for people for work in their companies. So make network, but yeah, I don't know. For me, this is a hard question.
Okay.
Well, I wanted to, Latasha, address your question of intentionality and getting the most of this experience here. That's a very great question because we're here right now. One process that I usually do before going to a conference, and it depends on having enough time and having your act together well enough, is before the show, sit down with the conference agenda and basically pick your sessions that you want to go to, right? And then if you are into blogging, put out a blog post saying these are the ones I want to go. And then as you're doing it, I've actually had people come to me, actually Ray Tsang said, hey, your live blog that you did for my session here last year, I've referred to it because I needed to remember what I said and go back to my own talk. But the point is, take good notes, and if you are a blogger, might as well just turn it into a blog post. So the intentionality aspect is study the program, pick the sessions, go to them and take notes.
All right, Venkat, you want to add to that?
So one of the things that I've used very effectively is being inspired by people who do things that I eventually want to do. The beauty of this is seeing somebody who has done it shows you that you can actually do it as well. And they got there somehow. They just didn't appear there. It was a journey they went through as well. And that's a journey that requires a lot of effort, a lot of commitment. But that's an inspiration we can take away from. And that's what I would recommend. And also to network to find out other people. You're making new friends. That's one of the things that I love the most going to conferences is I go into conferences with a group of friends, but I leave with a lot more friends than I came into. And for example, knowing people like Mary, I couldn't have known living in a completely different city in the world, but knowing that, hey, I know somebody I can call in when I go to Chicago. He's just amazing. And that networking is incredibly valuable because you've seen somebody, maybe you had breakfast with them, and you exchange names, you take their contact information. That's something you're going to take with you. So what I take back from a conference is the friendship, the relationship, the contacts, and that's extremely valuable. And then being inspired, following it through, I think is very valuable. And then to go off and start creating something, whether it is being part of your own community. You don't have to be very technical, honestly. some of the people that I know personally who are leaders of the Java community are not because they are coding Java, but they are there because they are like, hey, I could contribute in several ways to do this. They are helping people create content. They're helping, they're treasurers in user groups. They are meeting organizers. There are so many ways we can actually help. One of the biggest challenges I think a lot of us face is we want to define some kind of perfection and we tell ourselves we can't do that. But I think that's completely the opposite. We don't have to be perfect. Using the words of Les Brown, you don't have to be great to get started, but you got to get started to be great. I think that's extremely important.
You have to not be afraid to embrace your mediocrity, because at some point that's what we all are.
Yeah, good point. You want to add something, Jonathan?
I would just say also seek out your local Java user group and attend the meetings, other meetups as well, maybe also Ladies in Tech. I'd say that would be a great place to start building up this network for yourself. And otherwise, also learn to use your tools well. Maybe find a GitHub project, something that you're interested in. Check it out. Work out how to build it, how to interact with the code, and maybe pick a bug on the bug list and try fixing that. And then interact with the owners of the project and get their feedback.
All right, cool. Ivar, anything to add about getting started? If you're just getting started, what would be your tip you would give?
I said go on GitHub and clone a repo and do something, or create something your own. It doesn't have to be code, as I mentioned. My first open source contribution was actually to translate a getting started guide for Scala from English to Norwegian, and that's something that's valuable. It makes it more accessible. It doesn't involve coding. I don't know any Scala at all, but I was able to translate that book. So just find your thing.
Yeah, follow your passion, I think, is always good advice. All right, well, thanks for the questions. Thanks very much to our panelists for answering the questions and providing your guidance. I think we got some really cool content and questions, discussion going. This is definitely recorded, so if you missed the beginning because you were eating lunch or something like that, it'll be posted on the, I believe it's on the, is it on the YouTube? Java channel, YouTube, from DevNexus Developer Career Panel. So thanks, everybody, and thanks to our panelists. Really appreciate your time
Heather.
and contribution.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, thanks, everybody.